So good morning, everyone. I'm Stephen Kumsky, the Director of Teaching and Learning here at Nurture. And today I just got to demonstrate to you how you can firstly integrate Nurture into Microsoft Teams and then give you a quick demo of how it works in the Microsoft Teams environment and also show you how it works and sits within Google Classroom. So just very quickly, we'll jump into it. Installing Nurture is a simple 2 to 3 click process. So once we have you set up on our end, all you do is you click the plus tab up here. You look for, or it will come up as My Assignments. So it will come up near the top. You just click My Assignments, you click Save, and you've now installed Nurture into that classroom. So you will need to do this for every class that you have or the ones that you want to use it in. And what we do then is we look at how we can create our assignments. So the idea of using Nurture is that we can empower teachers with the time that we save on giving them formative feedback to make decisions on whether they want to give personal comments to students or use it for their own professional learning and so on afterwards. So just to create an assignment, very simple. We'll do a people in history assignment. So we'll just type in people in history and we can give a description. So for example, what we might do is we might, um, I'll just copy a couple of texts here. So in this case, we'll ask them to write about a Renaissance writer. So we'll say write about a specific Renaissance writer. And from here, we can start adding in attachments. So we can record an audio, we can record video as well. So particularly if you have students who may have learning difficulties such as dyslexia, you might want to record yourself giving the description. If you're a modern foreign language teacher or a teacher of Irish, it's actually really helpful that you can give the description as Gaeilge or you can translate it for them in the spoken language. So there's plenty of options here. You can even attach rubrics, exam papers, so on. There's an unlimited possibility to what you can do here. So we can attach something. We can set a due date. So we'll set it for this day week. And then we can grade the assignment. So we might say that this is worth 20 marks. And we can choose to display this to students as marks, percentages, or descriptors. So obviously descriptors is what we're going to use within the junior cert. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'm just going to click marks. So this is where our system starts working. So we have developed a research-backed framework, which is about providing really powerful formative feedback through the connection of learning objectives to the feedback. And to start this process, what we need to do is we need to start with the learning objectives. So let's put in some learning objectives. So the first one, for example, I might put in is students should include a minimum of 10 to 12 significant relevant statements to the question. The second one I might put in is maybe we start preempting that they actually have some issues with how they answer these questions. So maybe they're great at regurgitating the essay, but actually they forget to name who the writer is. So we're putting in this this preemptively to say you must name a specific Renaissance writer. And then finally, we can put in students will demonstrate their understanding of the significant relevant statement principle by marking each statement clearly on their work. So they'll highlight, number, or underline their work. We can also use this for if we're using group work, so we can put in things like collaboration. We can put in communication. We can even put in some more of the hard skills, like if we're doing a PE class, we can look at dribbling as one. We can look at organization. There's plenty of what we can put in here. So the learning objectives are really the success criteria, they're your learning intentions. But really these are what our students are being corrected on within the assignment. So put in as many or as few as you want, and you can even be a little bit coy with this as well. So if you're using them for exam preparation, there's nothing stopping you going higher level 2018, question 1, paper 2, and giving them the feedback on that. So there's plenty that you can do here. We then want to make it visible to the students because we want the students to know what they're being graded against. And it also means that they can start seeing the language of learning. They can start to understand what it is they're being asked of them. So including naming specifics, demonstrating their understanding. So that's kind of the administrative side of creating the assignment. This comes in at the end. So what we're really proud of here is we bring in student reflections. And the reason we do that is because we want to close that feedback loop. Too often as teachers, we put in the time and effort giving our students really good feedback, only for them to look at the grade and not engage with the feedback and put the copybook in their bag. And there's nothing more disheartening than seeing that. So to prevent that from happening, we've put in this student reflective piece. So we ask students when they receive the feedback from the teacher to reflect on the feedback that we've given them. So we can do this in two ways. We can do it as an emoji response, where students will say they're disappointed, neutral, or happy with the feedback that they've received. Or they'll do a 3-2-1 response. So they'll say three things they've learned, two things they found interesting, and one question that you're still left with. And that one question you're still left with is a really powerful checkpointing tool. So at the end of a unit or the end of a topic, if you start seeing commonalities with the questions they have left with, well, there's your topics for revision, or you know that there's key concepts that you need to go back because the students just haven't grasped them yet. And then even finding things that are interesting means you can link it into future classes where you might link in their interests. So what happens here is you put in the emoji, the 3-2-1 response, or no response. And when the student engages with the feedback, that unlocks their grade. So they need to engage with the process of their reflection before they get their grade. So we hit next, and we can assign it to all students. We can assign it to some students, or if you're getting ahead of yourself and you're just creating these for the week ahead, you can unassign it for now to assign it later when it is actually relevant. So for now, we're just going to click all students and we'll hit assign. So now we have sent out the assignment to all of these students. They can see what the description is, what the learning objectives are, and then we can see all the pending submissions. So I'm going to just briefly show you what that looks like when we have a submission from a student. So I'm going to go to one that we did before, and this is around series circuits. So they're using PhET simulations and uploading their work. So we have two learning objectives. They understand a series circuit needs to be complete from negative terminal to positive, or demonstrate proper connections between electrical items in a series circuit. So when we want to go through the submissions, there's lots of information that we can actually find here. So in this case, we have an emoji, which actually represents the student's confidence. So that's another data point that we collect from the students. So when the student submits their work, they tell us how confident they are in their work. So they'll say they're highly confident, neutral in confidence, or low in confidence. And when you have several students popping up here, you can see at a glance what the confidence level is of those students. So you can get a feel for how difficult that assignment was before you even start correcting the work. So that's the first bit of data that you can see. The second one then is that we can see the actual, we can go into their work and provide them a summative score. So we can see here in my demo assignment, I said I felt good about this assignment, and that reflects my high confidence level. Then what we can do is we can look at the sample document that they've uploaded. So I've just uploaded a sample Word document here. The student might upload an image, they might upload an Excel file, a PowerPoint, a video, an audio. So again, if you're doing some oral or oral work as a language teacher, students can actually give you back their own oral work, and you can grade them then on their pronunciation, or they can respond to you in certain ways. So it can be a really powerful tool. The other thing we can do here is, and I apologize in advance because I don't actually have a touch screen, but we can annotate this. So we might just say, okay, here is something I want to underline. Maybe I want to highlight this. Maybe I want to leave in a message beside here. So I'll say, great work here. So there's plenty that we can do within this annotation tool. And actually, if you've used Teams before, one of the great features of this is you don't need to download the work. You don't need to open it in a new tab or anything like that. It all happens within Nurture. And when you are finished annotating this, it saves, you can see here, it saves a copy for you, and it also saves a copy for the student as well. So they'll see the annotations that you put in. So once we do the summative part, We just scroll down here to where we review the submission. Oh, sorry. So we review it based on those learning objectives that we set earlier on. So again, our research framework shows that when you align the feedback to the learning objectives, learning intention, success criteria, that's where you create the really powerful formative feedback. Because first of all, what you're doing is you're making it clear to the students what their content gap is and how they can address it and close that content gap. So, for example, let's say in this case here, the students they did demonstrate that a series circuit needs to be a complete circuit from negative to positive terminals. So we don't click that, we leave that unclicked because they achieved that learning objective. The second objective then is that they want to demonstrate proper connections between electrical items in a series circuit. So let's say they fell down on this objective. Well, then what we do is we click this and we're saying to the system, this student needs feedback on learning objective 2. Then we can leave them a score. So in this case, let's say they got 20 out of 25 or 17. And then we can leave personal comments here as well. So, for example, excellent work. It's great to see your confidence coming along in leap and bounds. Keep it up, Stephen. Maybe they were out over the last week or two. Maybe they just haven't had a great run in this term. So you can leave them some personal comments. You can also attach any feedback here. So you might want to attach a rubric. Maybe you want to record a video for them or give them a piece of audio. So again, if you're a language teacher, it's very great that you can actually record yourself and give them the feedback in the target language. Or if there's words that they're struggling with pronunciation, you can record yourself giving them the correct pronunciation there. So again, plenty to do. You can even give them the rubric that they can go and do their own assessment afterwards. We hit marked as reviewed. And if we have more students, we click next and we go to the next student. So that's the summative part. The final part, and this is where we save you a lot of time and effort. And what I'll do is I'll actually find it with a number of students so that you can see what it looks like. Exactly, I don't have it there. My laptop has decided to slow down considerably. Just give me 2 seconds. So I'll just show you here that when we have our full classroom with 25 students, this is what it starts to look like. So we can see again their confidence levels. We can see what feedback they need. So we've tagged them as needing feedback in learning objectives 1, 2, or 3. So we scroll down, and what happens then is we actually get a high level overview of where our students are based on those learning objectives. So we can see here that these 10 to 12 students all need feedback in learning objective 1, which was our original Renaissance writer. So they need to include a minimum of 10 to 12 significant relevant statements to the question. So we can see the students who are failing or falling down on that learning objective. We can see some of them are still forgetting to name a specific Renaissance writer, and these are not demonstrating their understanding of the significant relevant statement principle. So before we even start giving feedback, we can actually see the breakdown of where our students are and where they're falling down on. But now we're going to start saving you time. So your teachers normally would be giving 2 stars and a wish, or they'd be giving comments along the way. That would roughly take them somewhere between 2 to 5 minutes per student. We're going to show you how you can turn that 2 to 5 minutes per student into about a 7 to 10 minute class activity and give really powerful formative feedback in that time effective manner. So you're talking a 10-minute max turnaround here to give somewhere between 30 to 120 formative feedback comments to these students. So we click edit feedback, and what we do then is we just ask you for 2 more questions. In general, how correct was the answer? So how correct were students when it came to including a minimum of 10 to 12 significant relevant statements? Let's say most of them gave somewhere between 7 and 9 relevant statements, so they're about an 8 out of 10. And how well did they understand the goal? Well, let's say that they highlighted half of what they gave into us. So we'll say they're about 5 out of 10. And then we can also break this down by their confidence. So you can start to see how confident they are in each learning objective. So again, if someone is high in confidence but they're scoring low. So if this score was, instead of 8 out of 10, if it was a 2 out of 10, you have an issue here that you need to address with the students. We make that very clear. We hit next. And what we do next is we break down the feedback into the three key components that every formative feedback needs. They're your task level feedback, which is how did the students do? Your process level feedback, which is how was their process? And what are the next steps, which is self-regulated feedback. And the reason we do this is because we want to give them information on how correct the task was, how how aligned the process was in terms of providing the content, the skills, the knowledge, and addressing the answer. And then also trying to give them the next step. So what's that bit of self-regulation we can give them? So we don't need to tell them go do your revision or go do X, Y, and Z, but actually by building in self-regulation, we make them more autonomous individuals, that they do this themselves kind of off their own bat. So to help you give this feedback, we have pre-filled templates. So for example, we might say it's good to see that you remembered to, and we'll type in include some SRSs, so significant relevant statements about the Renaissance writer. Then we'll go to the process. So again, it's the processing of the task. So we will say here, you understood the goal of the assignment well. What do you think you could improve your answer further? So we could just leave that as it is. But actually what we can do is we can scaffold the feedback a little bit more, and we'll give them a hint. And we'll say, how many relevant statements were you asked for? So again, we're asking them, prompt, go back and see the question, how many were you asked to give? And we're asking them then in their own mind, do you think you gave enough relevant statements? And then finally, the part about making them self-regulated and more autonomous. So this is about giving them strategies to help them going forward, either in answering similar questions or in their own strategies for assessing their own learning. So again, pre-filled templates. We'll say, here's the key thing you misunderstood. A significant relevant statement is a fact about the person. Do you think you included all of the facts you know about this Renaissance writer? So what we're doing here is we're actually respecting their prior knowledge. We're saying, we know you have this knowledge. Is there a way for you to go back and check that you included everything that you know about this person? So what we're doing here is we're actually being quite implicit in saying, go back and check your notes, do a little bit of revision. But maybe if this is a first year cohort and you're starting that with them, you might just explicitly say to them, check your notes and tell me which statements you forgot to include. So again, you're giving them that follow-on piece of work to do. And with all of this feedback, you don't need to follow our templates. These are just to kind of get you started in thinking about what feedback you might give them. You might have your own that you'll type in yourself. So we hit next. We can then include any general feedback that we have. So maybe if there's points here that we want to hit that we didn't get to within the task, process, or self-regulated levels, we can do that. And again, another opportunity to upload supporting documents. So for maths in particular, if this was, say, a higher level paper we're correcting, or if we're talking about inequalities, we can record ourselves giving them the worked solution, so we can attach the worked solution to that learning objective. Or if we're breaking it down into the processes of how to solve linear inequalities, it might be looking at the first step or the second step, and we show them through a video how they can do that. Again, languages, you can record the feedback for them. You can add in rubrics. You can add in extra work if you want. It's all up to you. You hit next, and then we just show you the summary of what the student will see. So they'll get it as action, process, and next steps. Any supporting document that we've given them, we create that feedback. And now what we've done here is we've created somewhere in the region of 10 to 30 formative feedback pieces, depending on how many students are in here. So within about 2 to 3 minutes, we've created up to 30 formative feedback statements. We just edit the feedback for learning objective 2 and learning objective 3, submit all, and we've now created somewhere in the region of 30 to 120 formative pieces of feedback for this cohort. That will take you about 10-15 minutes at most, which means that with the rest of your time, if you want, you can go back in and start leaving personal comments to individual students. So maybe you'll target someone in the lower end of your cohort, or in the higher end, or maybe you want to target the middle students because they're often forgotten. So you can do that. And then to close the feedback loop, The students will get a notification saying their assignment has been reviewed. The student will then respond using an emoji or the 3-2-1 response. And once they do that, that unlocks their grade. You see their engagement with the feedback, their self reflection, and then that closes the assignment cycle. So that's how it works within Teams. So again, we add the tab, we create our assignment, we send it to the students, we provide the feedback, and then the students reflect on it. So if anyone has any queries on the team section, please feel free to put them into the chat. And what we'll do is my colleague Patrick will address them if he can, or we'll have a discussion at them at the end. But what I want to do now briefly is I want to go through the Google side of things. So we're not just a Microsoft partner, we're also a Google Classroom partner. So we do integrate with Google Classrooms. And to show you how that looks in Google Classroom, so for Google Classrooms, you do need to go to our external website. It's school.jumpagrade.com. But what happens here is you connect your Google account to the Nurture platform or Jumpagrade here. And what happens then is all of your information from Google Classrooms is brought in. So you'll see all of your classrooms appearing. So if I just went to view all classrooms, you'll start having all of your classrooms appearing. When you send out an assignment using the Jumper Grade or Google Classrooms, your student gets everything through Google Classroom. So you don't need to worry about your student installing anything additional or going to any extra websites. It's all within Google Classroom for them. But for the teacher, we need to do it on our own website, just down to how Google Classroom's integrations work. So for us, you go to school.jumpagrade.com, you go to your classroom, you can view assignments, you can create posts. But for what we want you to use it for, you're going to be creating assignments. So again, click assignments, click new assignment, and it's very much the same process again. So assignment name, write about a specific Renaissance writer. Again, we can add attachments, so we can record an audio, we can include a video, we can add screenshots, we can put in rubrics, we can put in whatever we want, PDFs, PowerPoints, Excels. Possibilities are endless. And again, if you're a language teacher, maybe you want to record yourself talking through the description of the assignment, you want to include that oral piece. Um, or if you have students with additional needs, maybe you want to record the audio so that they're not using a lot of cognitive function for their descriptions. So if you have a lengthy description here, you might break it down for them using the audio tool. Again, set a due date and grade the assignment. So again, we'll say it's 20 marks. We can again display it as marks, percentages, or descriptors. So we'll leave it at marks. And we want to include our learning objectives. So again, the learning objectives are the key to this framework. This framework is backed by research evidence, and what it shows is when we align the feedback to the learning objectives, we close that content knowledge gap. We're able to address the specific deficits that students have with their content, with their skills, even with their own confidence levels. We can address that by specifically targeting the feedback to the learning objectives. So this is the key part here. Again, it's making really clear, specific learning objectives. Now, we use the language learning objectives because that's kind of the term a lot of teachers are familiar with. But these are your success criteria, they're your learning intentions. Um, it doesn't matter what the wording is, that's what you're looking at. They are your success criteria. So again, we'll just put in learning objectives. So give 10 to 12 significant relevant statements about a Renaissance writer, name a specific Renaissance writer, and then the final one is to demonstrate your understanding of the significant relevant statement principle by highlighting each statement clearly on their work. So again, highlighting, numbering, or underlining each relevant statement. And once again, we can add in other learning objectives. So if this is CBA time, so maybe you're doing drafting. So maybe the first draft of your CBA is about the organization, it's about the structuring, it's about the way the students communicate their projects. So you might put in organization, you might put in structuring. It would help if I could spell organization, if you might put in structure. You might even put in things like communication or collaboration. If you're from one of the more practical subjects, so my background is science, so as a science teacher, I might even put in things around health and safety. Are they being health and safety conscious and aware of their surroundings? When it comes to titrations, are they using the proper technique? Are they adding the right, are they adding acid to base or base to acid? Do they understand the difference? It's about putting in the learning objectives you want to give them feedback on. So this is a really helpful tool. So what I'll do is I'll just leave it at my three content ones, and we're going to make it visible to the students because again, we want the students to see what are the indicators of success. Finally, we're going to close that feedback loop. So we don't want students just looking for a score and not engaging with the feedback the teachers have given them. So to do that, we say students can go with an emoji or a 3-2-1 response. So in an emoji response, the students will receive feedback from the teacher and they'll respond with that they are disappointed, neutral, or happy with the feedback that they've received, and that will unlock their grade. Or they can give a 3-2-1 response. Three things they've learned, two things they found interesting, and one question that they're still left with. And again, that one question you're left with, that's your checkpoint question. That's to see what content and topics are students still struggling with. And we can use that for our revision later on, or we need to do more targeted teaching for specific content. So this is closing that feedback loop. So again, students will engage with the feedback you've given them, respond through an emoji or a 3-2-1 response, and that unlocks their grade. So we hit next, we assign it to all students, or we can select the students that we want to assign it to. So we hit assign, and that assignment has now gone out to all of our students. So when it comes to wanting to review that work, I'll show you one that has been done before. So I'll go to this classroom and I'll check a previous assignment. So again, we see the description. We see any additional materials that we've uploaded after the description. We can see the students and where they are. So if they have had feedback sent, if they're unassigned, if they weren't assigned to do that work, if they're pending reviews, we can see all that information. But the first thing that's going to jump out here is the emojis. And those emojis represent the students' confidence levels when they submitted the assignment. And that's really important because there's two key educational events we need to watch out for when it comes to confidence. So research shows that when students are high in confidence, they're less likely to engage with feedback. And we've all seen that happen in our own classrooms. The second one then is when students are low in confidence, they're actually more likely to engage with feedback. So as educators, there's two things we need to watch out for. The first being where students are high in confidence, but the answer is incorrect. Because what will happen there then is the students will not engage with the feedback. They won't correct any misconceptions or misrepresentations that they have, which is why we start seeing the same issues popping up again and again with certain students. But probably the more important one is low confidence students where the answer is correct, because what we can do then is we can go in and give that student lots of praise and lots of feedback and really encourage them to be more confident in their answers, be more confident in their self. And that's a very hard one to see in the classroom because often we'll see a correct answer, we might, for time saving sake, just tick correct and move on, and we'll say great work. But really we should be giving that student a lot more praise and a lot more feedback, because it's going to increase their confidence, which won't just impact them in the subject that you're teaching them in, but actually across every subject in their school. And if every teacher is using this, imagine the confidence boost that you're going to receive. So that's the first thing we can see. We can see that they're neutral in confidence, that they're high in confidence. We can see some low confidence coming in. So just scrolling through here, we're able to see, get an idea for how difficult or how the students found this assignment. So there's quite a range here. It goes from low, neutral, and high. So again, if this is a mixed ability class, that's probably not too telling or too shocking for us to see. So we now need to do the summative part. So we now need to just go in and give the scores. So we click Barry and Barry says, I think I got some parts right. So we'll view Barry's work. And again, Barry can upload a PDF, a PowerPoint, and Excel. If you're a language teacher, he can upload an audio piece. So this might be an oral or practice. So we'll just see that actually Barry has uploaded us with an image file, and what we can then do is if you have a touchscreen, if you have a touchscreen or a stylus, you can actually start annotating over this. So you can highlight the words, you can scribble in your own text, you can actually leave comments as well. So you can click in and leave him a comment somewhere. There's lots we can do, and even very handily, if they upload it sideways, which happens quite frequently, we can rotate that as well. And anything that you do to the student's work is saved as a copy for you and the student. There's no need to download the files. There's no need to go to a Google Drive link or anything like that. It opens within the browser and you're able to give them the work there and then. So then what we do is we've given them the summative work or the summative score, and we go in and we review their submission. So this is our research framework. We're trying to give the feedback specifically to the learning objective because we can address those gaps in their content knowledge or in their skill base. So let's say, for example, in Barry's essay, he only gave us 5 relevant statements instead of the 10 that are required. So that means Barry needs feedback on learning objective 1. In his essay, he did name a specific Renaissance writer, so he doesn't need feedback on learning objective 2, so we'll leave that untagged. Then, within his essay, he only highlighted 2 of his relevant statements, so he's not demonstrating the understanding of the significant relevant statement principle because he only highlighted 2 out of the 5 statements that he gave us. So he is going to need feedback on learning objective 3. Then we just give him his summative score, so let's say he got 10 out of 20. And again, we can leave some personal comments here. So maybe they were out sick over the last week or two. Maybe they've had a particularly tough week or tough couple of weeks in school or just at home. So we can leave some personal comments. Maybe they're a really good student and you want to spur them on a little bit more. So we can add in attachments. So maybe you want to give them extra work. You say, look, that was really good work. Go do this worksheet, or go record yourself doing this, or record an audio file of this, and so on. So again, that's for that student in particular. All we then do is we hit marked as reviewed, we hit next, and we do it again. So we go through and we give our summative score for each student. What happens then is our system now is tagging them for the formative feedback that they need based on those learning objectives. So again, really targeting specific learning objectives, because when we do that, we can close that content gap and any skill gaps that they have. So our system now collates that information. So it shows you at a high level what students are falling down on what learning objectives. So can you imagine if this was an essay or if this was an oral or oral piece? You can see even in maths or in science, in my subject, if this is specific content knowledge or skills, you can see where students are falling down on. So you can see, for example, learning objective 1, there's about 12 to 13 students there who did not include the minimum of 10 relevant statements for that essay. If this is a third year group now, you'd be asking questions. You know, you're not reading the question correctly, you're not doing your 10. This is something you need to know. So to see that many might be a bit of a red flag. Then we can see students must name a specific Renaissance writer. So again, there's about 9 or 10 students here who are forgetting to name who the writer is in their essay. And then again, there's another 8 or 9 students who are not demonstrating the understanding of the significant relevant statement principle. So depending on the learning objectives that you put in, this is a really nice breakdown of where students are struggling or failing down in the learning objectives. But now this is a really crucial part. We're going to give you a way to provide somewhere in the region of 30 to 120 pieces of formative feedback for that class group. Really powerful formative feedback in about 10 minutes or less. So when you go through your normal correction process, or when your teachers are correcting, they might do 2 stars and a wish. That takes anywhere from 1 to 4 minutes per student. So that's a lot of time when you've got a class of 25 students. So we're going to turn that from what would probably take an hour to 10 minutes or less. So we go into that learning objective. So we go into learning objective 1. We ask you for 2 pieces of information. So with learning objective 1, how correct were the students? How correct was the answer in general for those students? So let's say they all gave somewhere between 4 to 6 learning objectives. So do you know what? We'll put them at a 5 out of 10 or relevant statements. How well did the students understand the goals? So let's say they highlighted about half of the statements that they gave. So that means they're about a 5 out of 10. They half understand that principle. Then we break down the confidence levels. So again, we're showing you how confident those students are in that learning objective. So again, those key educational events, if they're high in confidence, they're less likely to engage with the feedback. So we need to target them after this. Or if they're low in confidence and the answer is correct, we need to give them praise. So we hit next. And what we do then is we break down the feedback into the 3 key elements that every piece of feedback needs. That's your task, your process, and your self-regulated feedback. And we break them down into how did the students do, which is task, how is their process, which is the process level feedback, and what are the next steps, and that's their self-regulated. So that's about making them more autonomous and self-directed learners. To help you get started with giving the feedback, we have pre-filled templates here, which again are based on good research. So we might say, it's good to see that you remembered to, and then type in, include some significant relevant statements about the Renaissance writer. Again, your teachers are the experts in their subjects. They'll decide what is the most appropriate feedback, but we just give them a little bit of a kind of a start with these templates. You don't need to use them, but they're there to get you going. Then we go into process feedback. So again, the template would be, you understood the goal of the assignment well. How do you think you can improve your answer further? So that in itself is actually a really good piece of feedback. But we can scaffold this a little bit more. Maybe we want to start bringing in that self-regulation piece a little bit earlier. So we might say, hint, how many significant relevant statements were you asked for? So again, go back to the question, read the question. What is the criteria you're being set? And in this case, it's 10 relevant statements. And then finally, what are the next steps? So self-regulation. So here's the key thing you misunderstood. A significant relevant statement is a fact about the Renaissance writer. Do you think you included all the facts you know about this Renaissance writer? So again, what we're doing here is we're respecting their prior knowledge. We're saying, we know you know more about this Renaissance writer. How can you check that you included all of the information you know about this writer? So we're actually quite implicitly saying to the students, go back and review your notes. Go back and do a little bit of revision without saying to them, go do revision. Now, if this is the first time you're doing this feedback, you might be more explicit. You might say, go back and highlight the facts you forgot about this Renaissance writer and resubmit your work, or resubmit those pieces that you forgot to include. But this is all about giving the students those processes around the period between where they submit the work to where they get the feedback, so that they can go and check their assignment. They can check their notes and say, oh yeah, do you know what? I forgot X, Y, and Z. So that's what we're trying to do with self-regulation. We hit next. We can include any extra feedback that we may not have incorporated or that we want to include here. Again, we can upload videos, we can upload audio recordings, we can include rubrics, we can include PowerPoints, PDFs. You can, if you're in maths in particular, you can record yourself going through a work solution for that learning objective and attach it to that objective. We hit next, and then we just give you a summary of what the student sees. So the students will see action, process, and next steps, and any supporting documentation. We hit create feedback, and that creates somewhere in the region of, we have 10 students, so it's somewhere up to 15 to 30 pieces of really powerful formative feedback for that cohort of students. All we do then is we repeat it for learning objective 2, learning objective 3, and we hit submit. And that means now our class group of 25 students have received somewhere in the region of 25 to 120 pieces of formative feedback for that assignment. If a teacher was to do that by hand, you're talking a couple of hours. We can do that within 10 minutes, which then empowers the teachers to make the decision on whether they want to go back and do maybe personal feedback for each individual student. Maybe they want to give more supporting documentation to some students, or maybe they want to go and do some more lesson planning, or maybe they just want to have a better work-life balance. So saving them that time means they can spend a bit of time with their family. So all we do then is we submit that feedback to all of our students. All of our students get a notification within their Google Classroom, and within their Google Classroom then they see the feedback that they've been given, and they need to engage with the emoji or the 3 to 1 response. So they will say that they're happy, neutral, or disappointed with the feedback, and that unlocks the grade. Or they'll say 3 things they've learned, 2 things they found interesting, or 1 question that they're still left with. And when they do that, then that gives them the score to the assignment, and that closes the feedback loop. So I'll just very briefly, before I finish talking, I'm actually going to just show you what this looks like in Google Classroom from the student perspective. So within Google Classroom, when the student gets their assignment, they'll actually get 2 pieces of work. The first is the assignment itself, but the second one then is a questionnaire, which is actually their emoji response. So, oh, sorry, just jumped around. So they'll submit their work. So this is Tom's work here. So he's uploaded his two images, and then he'll be asked to submit his confidence as well. So he'll say he's high in confidence, neutral in confidence, or low in confidence. That work then goes to the teacher, which we saw through our platform. Then you go and do your feedback process. That gets sent back into Google Classroom for the students, and they'll say feedback for the assignment is here. They'll click it, and then we're able to give them their feedback, and they will respond with the 3 to 1 or the emoji response. So that is Nurture in Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams. I'm going to stop presenting now. So if you have any questions, or if you have just joined us and you want a quick rundown on how we can add Nurture into your Microsoft Teams or Google Classroom environment, just let us know. We're here for the next couple of minutes to answer any questions around this session. So thanks for joining if you were there, and feel free to jump into the chat or jump into the audio room and ask away. Thank you very much.